Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Digital Dialogues brought to you by Broadband India Forum and Bharat Exhibitions. I am Rajat Mukherjee, Director General of Broadband India Forum, and I will be your host for this event. There will be an opportunity to ask questions at the end before we close the event, so I would request those that have a brief query to please enter them in the questions section on the right of your screen, and I will take them after the speakers have shared their views. In this second edition of the Digital Dialogues, we are privileged to have with us as chief guest Mr. Ajit Pai, Chairman of the US Federal Communications Commission, as well as Dr. R.S. Sharma, Chairman TRAI, who will chair the session. Ms. Dorothy Stanley, Chair 802.11 of the IEEE, and Professor Abhay Karandikar, former Chairman of TSDSI and presently Director at IIT Kanpur, join us as special guests of honor. The theme introduction will be given by Mr. T.V. Ramachandran, President of the Broadband India Forum. An esteemed industry veteran, Mr. T.V. Ramachandran is a well-recognized expert in the international arena in policy, regulation, and standards, and is also an honorary fellow of IEEE London. TV, over to you, sir.
Thank you, Rajat. So, Chief Guest, Mr. Ajit Pai, Session Chair, Dr. R.S. Sharma, Chairman TRAI, IEEE Wi-Fi Working Group Chair, Dr. Dorothy Stanley, Srimati Aminita Praveen from the Department of Telecommunications, Additional Secretary DOT, Professor Abhay Karandikar, former Chairman of TSDSI and Director IIT Kanpur and part-time member of TRAI, all you distinguished attendees and including distinguished media persons, a very warm welcome to all of you to this celebration of the World Wi-Fi Day. I feel immeasurably privileged and pleased to have the terrific good fortune to herald the oncoming Wi-Fi Day in the presence of such super eminent panelists who are undoubtedly the world's greatest champions of Wi-Fi for all and Wi-Fi anytime, anywhere and everywhere. India has, as is well known, tremendous ambitions as regards Digital India, of which Dr. R.S. Sharma here was a prime architect, and broadband for all. With a subcontinent of our size and a population of over 1.3 billion, characterized by enormous diversity, there would doubtless be a few challenges to the achievement of these goals. In fact, there may be a few skeptics and naysayers who might scoff at our goals. But, ladies and gentlemen, time and again, India has shown its propensity to adopt and absorb new technologies and race ahead. Let's hark back to 1992-93, when GSM digital communications was just being developed and tested in a few places in Europe, not commercial anywhere, not commercially introduced anywhere. At that time, very far-sighted technology visionaries sitting in DOT in Sanchar Bhavan dared to put down as a mandatory cellular standard the new GSM digital for the first cellular mobile telephone services being introduced in India for the first time. That was a brilliant and brave stroke, and it helped India leapfrog analog to adopt GSM, embrace GSM, and thanks to that is today one of the world leaders in this arena. Similar was the case in 2016 when we made a belated entry into 4G. But we stunned the world with our adoption of the new technology, the take-up of the new technology, and the humongous data consumption that has happened. Ladies and gentlemen, today we are poised at yet another historic moment, this time in the field of Wi-Fi, which is so essential for broadband. Simply put, the concept of WANI, Wireless Access Network Interface acronym, is for broadband what Aadhaar has been for unique personal identification. again and architected by Dr. R. Sharma. And what Unified Payments Interface, UPI, has been for financial transactions and financial inclusion in India. These are today buzzwords everywhere. Uh, Wani enables seamless roaming from one Wi-Fi hotspot to another without the hassles of re-identification, re-authentication, of payment mechanism, revalidation. All those hassles disappear. It's a brilliant innovation that was developed through wide-ranging public consultation and extensively field trialed and proven in Delhi, Noida, and Bengaluru. It has thus become extremely user-friendly, easy to use, and affordable. Thanks to the above, while India may currently be only at the baseline in Wi-Fi penetration compared to other countries and peers, it now has a very powerful special vehicle to catch up with others and race ahead, in fact. TRA's recommendations can surely make affordable broadband happen for all and also generate, in our estimation, from BIF, at least 100,000 crores, that is US dollar 15.38 billion on a very conservative basis. We reckon it will be even 50% higher than this through half a dozen verticals and segments. Such economic benefits are also in line with the findings of World Bank, ICRIER, and WIC Consulting on the impact of internet and broadband in India and the penetration on and on the impact on GDP growth. Well, India needs liberalized WANI Wi-Fi like yesterday, and it is able to be able to cope with a huge data usage, particularly in the COVID impacted environment. The tariff benefit is quite secondary. It's, in my opinion, not at all important, even if it is not there. What is essential is the huge quality of service benefit resulting from the use of such powerful Wi-Fi, and also the concomitant benefit that goes to mobile data of through mobile data offloads to get more stable mobile networks. During the COVID-19 pandemic, data traffic here in India shot up by as much as 30%, according to EY estimates. This would, however, we coped up very well from home despite this. How? This would not have been possible with only mobile broadband, as it is obviously hampered by spectrum availability problems, limitations. Due to work from home being adopted almost everywhere and everyone during this period, the focus on fixed broadband and Wi-Fi has shot up tremendously, a big challenge to network. However, the extra D-license spectrum in the 5 gigahertz band that DOT enabled about a year ago is like a godsend during this period, and that is what we believe has helped handle the increased traffic in the post-pandemic period. However, we believe more D-license spectrum would be required in the post-pandemic period because now various companies have declared that more than 75% of their staff will work from home and work from anywhere. In this context, I would like to humbly submit that the 6 gigahertz spectrum is something which is very, very important for India now. And if de-licensed as done in the US, it would be a great boon to cater to the completely rising volume of data traffic and maintain quality, and it will help the indoor penetration requirements of Wi-Fi. Ladies and gentlemen, liberalized Wi-Fi provides a win-win scenario for all. Of course, the consumer benefits from affordability and improved quality, but also the ISP benefits from new data carriage streams that come their way, and benefits from the requirement of hundreds of thousands of micro and village level entrepreneurs, and of course, broadband for all. Ladies and gentlemen, on the occasion of the World Wi-Fi Day, Broadband India Forum is today honored to rededicate itself to the cause of liberalized WANI Wi-Fi and broadband for all. I'm very happy to announce that we have constituted in BIF a very special high-level committee on exclusively devoted to Wi-Fi, chaired by RailTel, a patron member of BIF, which is introducing public Wi-Fi in thousands of railway stations in India. The CMD of RailTel, Mr. Puneet Chawla, is himself here with us today, and I request you all to give him a big hand on this. He is the chair of this. In conclusion, I would also like to highlight an interesting point. If you all recall, Jan Wi-Fi is the term born out of NDCP, which was architected by DOT and by TRAI. And Jan Wi-Fi means in Hindi, people's public Wi-Fi. Similarly, the term Vani is born from the TRI consultations, public consultations and trials, and effectively sort of developed by the people themselves. Curiously, therefore, the proposed brand contemplated by RailTel and their service provider, Wi-Fi, is Janwani. Janwani means Dorothy, Mr. Ajit Pai. Janwani means voice of the people in Hindi. It's a great concept. I mean, voice of the people is through Wi-Fi, a wonderful concept which represents the harmonious blending of two brilliant concepts. The one from DOT NDCP and the other from TRA. I think one could not ask for something better than that. And that's going to take us to success. Ladies and gentlemen, my deep thanks to all the eminent panelists, Dr. R. Sharma, Mr. Ajit Pai, Dr. Dorothy, Stanley, Ms. Anita Praveen, Mr. Puneet Chawla, Professor Abhay Karandikar, and all you distinguished attendees for the patient hearing and encouragement. As we say in India, Jai Hind, and may our Wi-Fi mission attain full success. Thank you.
Thank you very much, TV, for establishing the theme for World Wi-Fi Day in this digital dialogue series. To many of us, Professor Abhay Karandikar needs little introduction. I personally met him first when he was coordinating the Telecom Center of Excellence from IIT Bombay. An educator, engineer, and advisor, he is best known for his passionate work in the wireless domain and in the founding of the TSDSI as its first chairman. He is presently director at IIT Kanpur and also a part-time member of the TRAI. A member of the high-level forum on 5G, he chaired the 5G Spectrum Policy Task Force and was awarded the IEEE Essays Standards Medallion in December 2016. He has several patents to his name and contributions to both IEEE and 3GPP standards. Sir, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you very much for inviting me, and good evening, everyone. Let me just share my slide. All right. So this is the brief agenda for about 10-12 minutes. I'll just talk about Wi-Fi and broadband access, particularly the technical advancements which have taken place recently in the standard. I believe Dorothy will speak in detail, but I will nevertheless just give a small snapshot. Then I will also talk about Wi-Fi in the context of 5G, and then, the Wi-Fi and the rural broadband connectivity. Particularly, I will like to talk about IEEE P2061 standards project, which our group is driving, and also about the Government of India's ambitious project on BharatNet. As TV mentioned, that there have been several technical advancements recently in Wi-Fi, One sub-gigahertz Wi-Fi standard that has emerged is 802.11ah, which is called Wi-Fi Hello, which works in 900 megahertz unlicensed band. And it can also use relays to extend the reach. And essentially, it can connect thousands of devices under one access point. So primarily, it can be used for Internet of Things. Then we have a Wi-Fi 6, which TV was mentioning, which can work in 6 gigahertz. It is 802.11ax standards, and it supports the multi-user MIMO, very similar to LTE. And however, it can support up to 8 streams, and therefore we can get a very good data rate and the primary applications of cellular data offloads. In millimeter wave in 60 gigahertz, there have been very good advancements in the form of 11AD standards, and now 11AY, which can give the throughput of up to 20 gigabits per second. 11AY is essentially an enhancement over 11AD. In terms of spectrum regulations, as was mentioned also in the introduction, in 6 gigahertz, large frequency bands can be available up to 1 gigahertz. In US, I believe, and Ajit will speak more on this, I believe that a lot of band may be available for unlicensed operations. But we need to also see that what kind of spectrum can be carved out in the Indian context. In 6 gigahertz, particularly in V band, this is a very good band in terms of high oxygen absorptions, and as a result it can mitigate interference. Very large frequency band may be available up to 14 gigahertz. We know that in most of major economies this band has been unlicensed for both indoor and outdoor. As a part of the 5G spectrum policy task force which I chaired, we had also recommended that we can de-license this band to enable very short haul links and also many of the innovative applications of the middle mile, which I will just be talking in my subsequent slides. In terms of public Wi-Fi hotspots, you know that in most of the major economies of the mobile users, up to 70% of the total usage time is being connected on the Wi-Fi. However, in India, because of a very small number of public Wi-Fi hotspots, only about 0.1 million Wi-Fi hotspots was there in 1 or 2 years back. This percentage is even less than 10%. And it is estimated that we may reach about 600 plus million Wi-Fi hotspots worldwide. Policy-wise, there has been a lot of thrust from the government of India. The Department of Telecom has come out with a national digital communications policy which targets that we could have a 5 million hotspots by this end of this year and 10 million by 2022. Jan Wi-Fi and BharatNet, which is essentially in urban areas, there is a plan to have a large number of Wi-Fi hotspots. In fact, the Telecom Regulatory Authority also came out with its recommendations on public Wi-Fi networks to promote open public Wi-Fi access. The TRAI's recommendation has also talked about utilizing the BharatNet infrastructure. And I'm sure Dr. R.S. Sharma will speak more on this. In terms of 5G, I believe that Wi-Fi could be one of the key access technology for the 5G. It can be integrated with 5G core very seamlessly, and it can support many of the 5G use cases. As a matter of fact, Wi-Fi 6, which is actually an 802.11ax standard, can support the eMBB use case of IMT 2020, that is the 5G. And similarly for the IoT, the sub-gigahertz Wi-Fi, which is at 900 megahertz, can also support. So there is a lot of complementarity between the 3GPP 5G and the Wi-Fi use case for the 5G, which can actually use for stationary and low mobility users, while for high speed mobility the users can get onto the cellular mobile standards. Coming to the mobile network architectures, and I just wanted to tell you about the role of the Wi-Fi there. Today, any cellular networks is having increased network densification, also a lot of heterogeneity. A variety of radio access technologies are going to be in use. Even if we have the 5G NR, we are likely to have LTE advanced 4G. We will have Wi-Fi, and in India we could even have 3G and 2G as well. So we are essentially likely to have a multi-radio access technologies, and unfortunately, this leads to a fragmented architecture where the radio access technologies are controlled and managed independently. And this fragmented decision making RAN also leads to suboptimal utilization of the resources in terms of the distributed radio resource management. There is also no single entity with a unified or global view of all the network resources. Although all these multi-radio access technologies today in principle can be connected to a unified 5G core with a common interface towards core for access networks is the need. And in all these radio access, Wi-Fi continues to be an important access technology. So in IEEE, we are driving this new standards P1930.1, which actually provides a unified multi-radio access technology RAN, which is actually based upon the SDN framework, and this has an SDN middleware which can provide an abstract view of the radio network entities, and it has an SDN controller which can control and manage the access networks. Of course, there is a management and orchestration entity to manage the SDN middleware over the RAN infrastructures. And the part of the RAN, you could have the entire family of 802.11 radio access networks, that is all kinds of Wi-Fi, and also the 5G and LTE RAN. So this way you could provide a single radio, single SDN controller for the multiple radio access technologies control. What is the context of the Wi-Fi in rural broadband in India? In India, in the last decade or so, we have seen a significant proliferation of the broadband and internet. But despite this, considering our population, a large population still do not have a broadband or internet access, particularly in the tier 2 and the rural areas. The access to 4G or beyond 4G still continues to be limited. In the developed world, as you know, that the internet was always enabled through the wired communication infrastructure like fiber to the home and DSL, but in countries such as India, cellular technology was the primary mechanism for accessing the broadband. In fact, cell phones were the primary phones for most Indian users, and the fiber to the home or DSL infrastructure continues to be inadequate. So there are certain challenges in adopting, therefore, the cellular technology as a primary broadband access mechanism in the Indian context, in the sense that many of the use cases are focused on the urban usage scenario and the high mobility kind of a scenario. However, there are certain challenges or characteristics of the rural connectivity which have not been factored in many of the specifications, which have been developed. So we believe that in the Indian context, in the rural scenario, a good use case would be a large number of small cells like a Wi-Fi hotspots as the high-speed access points, in the villages. And these Wi-Fi hotspots can be backhauled using what we call as a wireless middle mile, which could be in the sub-gigahertz in the rural areas, and this could be a mesh networks of 11 AD 60 gigahertz in the dense urban areas. And we could also use the point-to-point wireless links to connect the nodes in the villages. And the entire architecture can be controlled through an SDN controller very similar to P1930, which I've talked. Which is very similar to a concept. We can use it via BharatNet. Just wanted to briefly, 2 minutes, tell you that BharatNet is an initiative to provide the broadband access in the rural area through optical fiber connectivity to the administrative units of villages, what is called as Gram Panchayats. But the challenges continues to be that how do you provide last mile access? How do you provide the connectivity between the Gram Panchayat office and the villages? And how do you maintain these optical equipments? The BharatNet Wi-Fi delivery model is that the fiber is dropped at the Gram Panchayat office. There is an ONT at the Gram Panchayat office, and then you could connect, a Wi-Fi hotspots at the Gram Panchayat. And if you have to take it to a village, then of course you could either take it to a point-to-point links or through a middle mile, which I was just talking about in a 2061 kind of a network architecture, which we are defining it in IEEE standards. There is a related aspect which I just want to touch upon in terms of the Wi-Fi delivery, and which is, how do you these access points are managed, and how are the subscriber actually will be managed through this. In India, we have an organization called the CSC, which is an organization to deliver the citizen services as a part of the Department of Electronics and Information Technology. And the CSC is currently as a model to provide the last mile access through what is called as a Wi-Fi Choupal. This convergence could help in the effective maintenance and utilization of BharatNet and also strengthen the citizen services model, which actually the CSC is mandated to provide. I think what I must point out here, one of the most important mechanism of managing these Wi-Fi hotspots is through the local level entrepreneurs, the village level entrepreneurs, the VLE, which actually manages the local Wi-Fi hotspots and buys the bulk bandwidth from an internet service provider. And this decentralized model, we believe, is an important component of managing the large overheads which the big telecom or an internet service provider will have in providing the connectivity to each and every villager. So this is what I wanted to say. We believe that both the Wi-Fi in various forms, either in sub-gigahertz form, in 900 megahertz, in 60 gigahertz, have all the different use cases in the Indian context. It could be used as the public Wi-Fi hotspots. It could be used as a cellular offload and for stationary users along with the 5G deployment. And the 60 gigahertz V-band mesh networks could be used as the wireless middle mile to backhaul these Wi-Fi hotspots in the dense urban area. So this is all I wanted to say today evening. Thank you very much. And let me just stop sharing the slides.
Thank you so much for that very interesting presentation, Professor Karandikar. Really grateful for that. Our next special guest of honor and speaker, Ms. Dorothy Stanley, has served in several leadership roles in the wireless standards world and is a well-recognized expert in her field. Her work in standards development and industry interoperability programs continues to enable the Wi-Fi industry to innovate and provide creative solutions. She has led and contributed to numerous Wi-Fi Alliance task groups and received outstanding contribution awards from the WFA. May I now invite you, Dorothy, to present your views.
Okay, thank you very much. Good morning, good evening. I appreciate the opportunity to present on the activities of the IEEE 802.11 standard and its support of broadband networks. So I'm going to stop my video. Now, is the presentation able to be shared? Yes, excellent. So I'd like to thank the Broadband India Forum for this invitation and the ability to speak on the topic of broadband access and Wi-Fi network support of that access. My remarks really are in two categories. The first, some examples of Wi-Fi networks, 802.11 networks in use today for broadband access, and then we'll take a look briefly at a couple of the amendments under development to show how 802.11 Wi-Fi networks will continue to support broadband networks well into the future. Next slide, please. So the need for broadband is global. It is absolutely global, an essential requirement in every country. In the slide here, I want to highlight that 802.11 systems are used extensively today in broadband solutions globally. However, we are not done. The need for providing broadband access, especially in rural areas, exists everywhere, nearly everywhere on the planet, including in the US. The first link that is there is a link to a press release related to an internet hotspot service that was recently offered in the Maryland, Virginia, Washington, D.C. area by a company under an initiative to improve rural broadband access. And so they're providing hotspot services using Wi-Fi. The quote at the top, why is this necessary? Hotspots offer those in the community access to such a variety of services that enables economic development and personal well-being. So that's an example in the U.S. And the need in the U.S. for rural broadband and rural connectivity is a very real need. Likewise, the second example is one that references the India Center for Development of Telematics, CDOT, and some work that they have done in developing a satellite Wi-Fi combination system so that connectivity can be deployed very quickly into remote areas for a number of, whether it's emergency services access or broadband internet access. Next slide, please. So the work that we do in standards is to provide the infrastructure, the technical infrastructure that enables low-cost, standardized, low-cost Wi-Fi enabled broadband solutions. For specifically 802.11 networks, we focus on the standardization, making sure systems can be implemented in a cost-effective manner. We enable backward compatibility so that systems that are currently deployed will continue to work and can be supported by future systems to the very best extent that that's possible. And we incorporate leading edge technology. So when you deploy a Wi-Fi system, you are getting the most recent technology. I'd like to acknowledge that radio spectrum is absolutely essential, obviously, for any wireless system. I'd like to acknowledge recent actions by the India Ministry to open up the 5 gigahertz band. And the link that's provided here, there are several, obviously, and I could have referred to the India Ministry announcement itself, but this link kind of says it all, that India has more spectrum available in 5 gigahertz for Wi-Fi than any other place in the world. So that is a tremendous accomplishment, and I know that there's a lot of work going on to use that spectrum to provide broadband access with Wi-Fi. The recent FCC action, I think, has been visible globally to look at the 6 gigahertz and how to effectively leverage and get more value out of that spectrum for consumers and for populations globally. And we really appreciate the ability to use that spectrum, have the opportunity to use it in the Wi-Fi community. The top figure on the right is a schematic showing the different allocations in 6 gigahertz. The lower picture, where you see the 3 bars across the top, and then the lower one, I know it's somewhat unreadable here, but this is a schematic of the preamble and the technical foundation that allows backwards compatibility in Wi-Fi systems. So we have basically an indicator or a code at the beginning of every frame that legacy systems and new systems both recognize. And that's the foundation of what allows legacy systems and this backward compatibility. Next slide, please. In 802.11 and Wi-Fi Alliance, in 802.11 in particular, we respond to new technology, and we respond most heavily to market needs. In IEEE, the standards development is really market-driven and industry-driven. So we enable innovation, we develop standards to respond to market needs. And the current strongest market need is really the exponential demand for throughput and connectivity. The statistic was given earlier, depending on the specific country, a significant portion of the world's mobile data is carried via offload or direct Wi-Fi access. And this is an incredible opportunity for us to serve consumers and drive economic activity globally. Wi-Fi 6, which is based on the 802.11ax standard, the primary goal when that standard was initiated was to increase the throughput and importantly, the efficiency in the bands that were available at the time, 2.4 and 5 gigahertz. Since then, the standard is being extended to also support 6 gigahertz as the technical details there are unfolding. But we realize that having access and use of the spectrum is also brings with it a responsibility to effectively and efficiently use that spectrum because it is a community and a resource. So we attempt to do that to the extent possible. 802.11ay was mentioned. This is a standard for a 60 gigahertz band. The target there is support for 20 gigabits per second. And the new 802.11be standard is looking at extremely high throughput, so even higher throughput applications. Next slide. Within 802.11ax or Wi-Fi 6, there are 4 main focuses of technical improvement. The first is spectral efficiency and area throughput. So within a given geographic area or cell, the spectral efficiency is improved, and thus the throughput is improved. The specific technical techniques are shown here. The focus was also on high density. So we see a number of applications, whether it's a stadium, a university, conference center, where very high throughput applications are required. And so the intent was to better serve those high density applications. Moving on to power save, the need for an improved power profile is also constant. So we've put in a number of new features to support improved power save on devices so that basically your battery lasts longer. And then to support outdoor and longer range applications. And this is particularly useful outdoors. Next slide. The prior speaker, Professor Karandikar, mentioned that it's been shown that 802.11ax meets the MAC and PHY requirements that have been defined for 5G, IMT 2020 by the ITUR. And so this chart shows a list of the metrics that the ITUR defined, the evaluation methodology, the minimum requirement, and the 802.11ax performance. The chart here is shown for indoor hotspot. There's a similar one for the dense urban test environment. When I said at the beginning that we provide the latest technology and the latest performance. This is a validation of that. The analysis that was done here was via simulation and theoretical analysis, and this work was done by Sindhu Verma and Shubhadu Adhikari, who are based in Bangalore and work for Broadcom. So I want to call out them and the work that they've done to really document the strength of Wi-Fi 6 and the fact that it is a very, very strong technical solution that people can be confident of deploying. Next slide, please. 11AY, here are some of the applications. Within the standard, applicability is in license exempt bands above 45 gigahertz. Completion has been is on track this year. Basically, the standard is complete. We're putting the final going through the final procedural steps, and the first chipsets have been announced. So I expect that these applications will be deployed herewith. Next slide. When we talk about broadband and the need for broadband globally, 60 gigahertz is being used in a number of new products for fixed wireless applications. So effectively the last mile or the last mile in mesh. There's a lot of work being done globally by Cambium Networks and various Facebook initiatives to look at how do we get more cost-effective last mile or community backhaul systems. And here, 60 gigahertz space solutions can play an important role. A lot of the initial prototyping and deployments have been done. This is one example. Next slide. The innovation continues, and one of my main messages was that our intent in .11 is to continue to innovate on the technology front so that consumers continue to have very cost-effective, backward-compatible, efficient, RF-efficient mechanisms based on .11. And the future amendment that's doing work here, again with participation by individuals globally, is the BE amendment. The intent is that we will support even higher throughput. The goal is 30 gigabits per second. Look at even more support for low latency communications, and of course targeting the available bands with backwards compatibility as appropriate. Next slide. So I've mentioned briefly 11AX, 11AY, 11BE. We have a number of other initiatives underway to continue to add value and features in Wi-Fi networks to support broadband applications and more features and functionality on top of that broadband network. So we mentioned positioning features, 802.11az, 11BA, wake up radio. Here, this is a continuous improvement on the power usage profile. 11BB, looking at light communications. 11BC, I'll highlight briefly, enhanced broadcast service. This is looking at a number of applications that can use a deployed 802.11 broadband system for broadcast services, whether it's radio or emergency alerts. Basically providing a platform that users and developers can innovate upon to provide more and more services on an existing Wi-Fi network. Here, there's been work going on in .11, a proposal by Sandeep Agrawal at CDOT and some of his colleagues to look at an emergency alert system similar to a proprietary one that was developed by CDOT for applications in India. So that work actually fits nicely in the broadcast service amendment, and I appreciate the fact that Sandeep and his colleagues are contributing there. And then finally, enhancements for next generation V2X, the extensions of the 11P system, so that, in a backwards compatible, spectrally efficient way, we can support evolution for vehicular applications. We continue to look at new applications in new areas, and sensing and random access, random MAC addresses are an area there that are under investigation. Next slide. So Wi-Fi solutions, Wi-Fi technologies, .11 solutions really are unique in the fact that via use of unlicensed spectrum or license exempt spectrum, we're able to put the technology in the hands of innovators globally at a very low cost point. And this is really a fundamental aspect of the success of Wi-Fi, that the ability to innovate is spread very broadly. And this is one very interesting example. This Project OWL, where some students created a network that basically could be easily deployed, and they're looking at using it for natural disaster applications. But again, the foundation is that the technology is there due to the spectrum being available to be put in the hands of innovation and innovators globally, so that, and that drives economic development and well-being. So thank you for your time and attention. I appreciate the opportunity to speak, and thank you for the invitation. I appreciate your attention.
Thank you very much, Dorothy, for your very interesting presentation.
You're welcome.
As we celebrate World Wi-Fi Day through these digital dialogues, our chief guest today is Mr. Ajit Pai, Chairman of the Federal Communications Commission. Sir, our thanks to you for joining this session. Your bold decision to release 1200 megahertz of spectrum for use in Wi-Fi has garnered you the title of Wi-Fi champion, and this is bound to positively impact the lives of every person in the USA who is connected wirelessly. Mr. Pai is a graduate from Harvard University and from the University of Chicago Law School as well. He is known for championing regulatory modernization. He has previously served in various positions of increasing responsibility at the FCC, the U.S. Department of Justice, and the U.S. Senate. Sir, we are delighted to have you with us. I acknowledge the fact that you are having some difficulty with your camera, but we eagerly await your thoughts on the subject. Over to you, sir.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Mukherjee. If it's any consolation, it is much better to hear me, I suppose, than to see me live. But I do want to express my appreciation to the Broadband India Forum for inviting me to participate in this online celebration of World Wi-Fi Day. And I think the mere fact that we were able to hold this conference across continents is a testament to the power of Wi-Fi. I'm especially honored to be part of such an impressive lineup of speakers. You have heard, of course, from Mr. Abhay Karndikar, and just now from Dr. Dorothy Stanley. And later on, you'll be hearing from TRAI Chairman Ram Sharma. I have the deepest admiration for all of them. And in particular for Mr. Sharma, when I think of him, I long for the days that I was with him in person. In fact, the last time we were together was the last time I can remember things feeling normal before the coronavirus lockdown. Back in February, I was honored to represent my country as part of a U.S. delegation to India that was headed by our president. And I kicked off my trip with a visit to TRAI, where Chairman Sharma graciously hosted a town hall with the agency's talented officers. And one of the things we talked about was the potential of 6 gigahertz spectrum. Later that day, I met with Secretary Anshu Prakash for an in-depth discussion on spectrum, including Wi-Fi. And then, of course, if you throw in a state banquet at Rashtrapati Bhavan, seated across the table from A.R. Rahman, I was on cloud 9. I think the only thing missing was one of my favorite drinks, which I can't get much anymore, a thumbs up. Anyway, fast forward 2 weeks, and I was staying at home as millions of Americans were for the foreseeable future. Going into a month-long quarantine is a challenge under any circumstances, and I know that has been the case for many around the world, including in India. But even though I can't be with you in person, I'm truly grateful for this opportunity to meet with you remotely over Wi-Fi. And that, of course, is the reason for our gathering today virtually. We've come to celebrate World Wi-Fi Day, which is tomorrow. And you could make the case that every day has been Wi-Fi Day since the pandemic took hold. I'm guessing almost all of us are using Wi-Fi right now to be a part of the video conference. Our children have relied on Wi-Fi for their schooling, and I'm sure I'm not the only one here who has used Wi-Fi to stream an unhealthy amount of movies and television shows over the past 3 months. I think at its core, Wi-Fi's most important application might simply be keeping us connected to our families and our friends, as well as the outside world. That has been true during the pandemic. It was true before, and I think it will be true once this emergency is over, which I hope will be soon. And that's why I think it's appropriate that the focus of this event is on the power of Wi-Fi to help bridge the digital divide, to connect the unconnected. Now, I think you've picked the perfect day from an FCC perspective to have this discussion, and that's not just because World Wi-Fi Day is tomorrow. It's also because today is the FCC's birthday. In fact, 86 years ago today, on June 19th, 1934, President Franklin Roosevelt signed into law the Communications Act, which established the FCC. And I bring that up because one of the reasons why the FCC was created was explicitly because of Section 1 of the Communications Act, which says the FCC shall make wire and radio communication, quote, available to all the people of the United States. And to me, that is a worthy and enduring commitment. In 1934, the U.S. government thought it was so important that every American have access to the telephone network that it created a new agency dedicated to that purpose. And today, if you think about the countless ways that we rely on high-speed broadband connectivity, it's very impressive. Telemedicine, precision agriculture, distance learning, gaming, so many other applications, and including, of course, the occasional voice call. To me, the internet has become the indispensable platform for innovation and job creation and free expression. And so we have an economic and a moral imperative, in addition to a legal imperative, to make this connectivity available to all the people that we serve. To me, promoting the availability of Wi-Fi and advances in this technology are key pieces of any strategy to provide connectivity for all. Even before anyone had heard of COVID-19, Wi-Fi already carried more than half of the internet's traffic, and offloading mobile data traffic to Wi-Fi was vital to keeping our cellular networks from being overwhelmed. In a very real sense, Wi-Fi is the fabric that binds together all our digital devices. And Wi-Fi will be even more important in the years to come. By one estimate I've seen, the economic value created by Wi-Fi in the United States alone is projected to double by 2023, reaching nearly $1 trillion. And so what is the FCC doing to harness the power of Wi-Fi to bridge the digital divide? In the immediate term, we have expanded access to Wi-Fi as part of the FCC's response to the coronavirus pandemic. We recognized early on that social distancing was going to force huge segments of our economy and much of our daily lives online. And so we decided that our top priority would be making sure that as many Americans as possible would have access to communication services, and that no American would have their internet and voice services cut off due to disruptions caused by the pandemic. And so in mid-March, I called on America's broadband and telephone service providers to take what I called our Keep Americans Connected pledge. And this pledge, which we've extended until June 30th, has three basic commitments. One is that no consumer would lose service due to an inability to pay a bill. Second, no one would be charged late fees because of the pandemic. And third, notably for today's event, Wi-Fi hotspots everywhere would be opened up to anyone who needed them. And I'm pleased to say that more than 780 U.S. broadband and phone providers signed this pledge, including all of the nation's largest service providers and many of the smallest. And these Wi-Fi hotspots have been an incredibly important lifeline for countless Americans who don't have broadband service at home. Now, looking a bit further into the future, the most important action the Commission has taken recently to promote the development and deployment of Wi-Fi services is our plan for the 6 gigahertz band, which both Dr. Stanley and Mr. Krendlicker mentioned. With our growing reliance on Wi-Fi, we are going to need faster and stronger Wi-Fi networks. And as you have heard, the good news is that Wi-Fi 6, the next generation of Wi-Fi, has already started rolling out. Wi-Fi 6 will be over 2.5 times faster than the current standard. It will offer better performance for connected devices, and it will present many other opportunities. But in order to fully take advantage of those opportunities, we need to make more mid-band spectrum available for unlicensed use. And that is exactly what the FCC did on April 23rd. The Commission unanimously approved my proposal to make the entire 6 gigahertz band from 5925 to 7125 megahertz available for unlicensed use. And by doing this, we're creating a massive 1200 megahertz test bed for innovators and for innovations. This is a big deal. We are effectively increasing the amount of mid-band spectrum available for Wi-Fi by almost a factor of 5. Now, importantly, all 1200 megahertz of this spectrum will be available for indoor-only, low-power use without the added complexity of database coordination. We're also making the two largest subbands, totaling 850 megahertz, available for use indoors and outdoors at a higher standard power. Outdoors, we will use an automated frequency coordination system to prevent interference with incumbent services. Now, going big on the 6 gigahertz bands means allowing unprecedented 160 and even 320 megahertz wide channels for Wi-Fi. I suspect this will dramatically ease spectrum capacity as a constraint on innovation and open the door to high bandwidth applications. And ultimately, I expect that 6 gigahertz unlicensed devices will become a part of consumers' everyday lives. And I predict that the rules that we adopted in April will play a major role in the growth of the Internet of Things, connecting appliances, machines, meters, wearables, smart televisions, and other consumer electronics, as well as industrial sensors for manufacturing, industrial IoT. As one industry leader has put it, this 6 gigahertz spectrum boost will launch the Wi-Fi industry into a new growth trajectory, and it will bring low-cost Wi-Fi and unlicensed connectivity to places where it has never been, a very unique opportunity to help close that digital divide. Now, at the same time, I want to stress that our approach will ensure that incumbents in the 6 gigahertz band are protected from harmful interference. The point-to-point microwave services that already use this band are critical in our country to the operations of electric utilities, public safety, and wireless backhaul. And we are ensuring that those incumbents are protected by requiring the use of automated frequency coordination systems, which will allow only new standard power operations in areas that won't cause interference to those incumbent services. And we're also placing conservative power limits on low power indoor operations. And that's important, I think, to balance the needs of unlicensed operations, the future, as well as incumbent operations. Now, the last point I would emphasize regarding the 6 gigahertz band is that we're not done yet. In addition to our order, the FCC voted to explore possibilities for very low power devices in the 6 gigahertz band. These VLP devices could enable a very new and innovative generation of personal area network technologies with low latency and high capacity and all-day battery life. It's hard to foresee what the future might bring, but these VLP devices could include accessibility technology for Americans with disabilities, or virtual reality gaming, or augmented reality glasses, in-vehicle systems, and other emerging technologies. As I said, we don't know for sure, but that's kind of the point with unlicensed innovation. We want to set the building blocks in place so that engineers and technologists, those with their eyes on the future, can figure out what it could mean for consumers. Now, during my visit to India in February, as I mentioned a little bit earlier, I had a good discussion with Secretary Prakash about our 6 gigahertz efforts, and so I know that the government of India is interested in exploring the possibilities of unlicensed use in this band. I certainly want to be a partner with the government of India, with anyone in the country that is eager to explore the possibilities here, and I want to work with you and other leaders around the world to harness the benefits of the 6 gigahertz band for Wi-Fi. And then, of course, working together toward global harmonization of this spectrum, which, of course, will make 6 gigahertz pop even more. Now, while our 6 gigahertz initiative may be the Commission's most significant push to expand and improve Wi-Fi, it is hardly the only one. Sticking in the same neighborhood on the spectrum chart, the FCC is also taking a fresh look at the 5.9 gigahertz band. Back in 1999, the FCC allocated 75 megahertz of spectrum in this 5.9 gigahertz band for a service called Dedicated Short Range Communications, or DSRC. Now, back then, DSRC, the hope was that DSRC would enable ubiquitous transportation and vehicle-related communications. Unfortunately, the performance of DSRC has not lived up to the promise, and as a result, most of the 5.9 gigahertz spectrum is not being used in the United States right now. And after 20 years of seeing these prime airwaves largely lie fallow, I decided that the time had come for the FCC to rethink this band. And so last December, the FCC launched an initiative to end the uncertainty around the 5.9 gigahertz band and set a path for the deployment of new services. Specifically, we propose to make available the lower 45 megahertz of the band for unlicensed uses like Wi-Fi, dedicating the upper 20 megahertz of spectrum for a new vehicle communications technology called CV2X, cellular vehicle to everything. And we're also asking whether the remaining 10 megahertz should be allocated to CV2X or DSRC. Now, thanks to its neighbor, this spectrum in the lower 45 megahertz of the 5.9 gigahertz band would punch above its weight. And that's because the adjacent 5.725 to 5.85 gigahertz band is currently available for unlicensed operations in the US. And so when you add the 45 megahertz subband, you've got 160 megahertz wide channel. And so that's going to be critical to supporting innovative use cases. We've already seen tantalizing glimpses of the punch that this spectrum could pack for consumers, specifically how the lower 45 megahertz of this band can be used to solve problems right now, like improving rural broadband access, which Dr. Stanley and Mr. Karnthikar have talked about. In response to the COVID-19 pandemic, the FCC over the past couple of months has granted what's called Special Temporary Authority, or an STA, to over 150 broadband providers to use the lower 45 megahertz of the 5.9 gigahertz band. We've allowed them to use the spectrum to meet the connectivity challenges posed by this national emergency, especially in rural areas. And these STAs, these temporary actions, have delivered incredible results. Multiple fixed wireless providers that have been allowed to use the 5.9 gigahertz band have reported to us that it has enabled faster speeds and increased coverage and expanded network bandwidth. Collectively, I think that this experience shows the promise of the 5.9 gigahertz band for unlicensed use, especially for harder to serve areas. And they reinforce my belief that the best course for the United States is to dedicate that lower 45 megahertz of the band exclusively for Wi-Fi. So wrapping up, the United States and India clearly have very common interests when it comes to spectrum policy. And I, for one, look forward to building on today's dialogue, continuing to exchange ideas, and hopefully working together extensively in the future to expand Wi-Fi and bridge the digital divide. It is a often said cliche, but I think it's true nonetheless that we share so many values as the world's oldest and largest democracies. I have had the chance to see that for myself in my conversations with my dear friend Chairman Sharma, with Secretary Prakash, and so many others in India. And naturally, of course, given my background, India will always have a very special place in my heart. And so I want to do anything I can to help us realize the promise of communications technologies to better the citizens of our respective countries. Thank you once again to the Broadband India Forum for giving me this opportunity. And I would turn the floor back over to Mr. Mukherjee. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much for your very, very inspiring thoughts and ideas. Now comes the time for us to release the white paper on proliferation of broadband through Wi-Fi. And I would like to invite Sri Puneet Chawla, Chairman and Managing Director of RailTel and Chair of the Wi-Fi Committee at the Forum, along with Mr. T.V. Ramchandran, to join us while the release video is being played. May I request all the speakers to please switch on their videos so that we can be seen.
Yeah, I have switched on my video. Good evening. I'm Chawla here.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, everybody. A copy of this white paper will be available on the homepage of our website and is free to all to download. And now to our final session of the evening, before we have a quick question and answer session. Our session chair, Dr. R.S. Sharma, needs no introduction to most of us. He has ably headed the regulatory body since 2015 and is a senior IAS officer who, after a meritorious record of government service, including head of UIDAI, now leads the renowned telecom regulatory body for orderly growth and consumer protection in both the telecom and broadcasting sectors. Sir, the floor is yours.
Well, good evening to you all, and good morning to my friend Chairman Pai. It's really a privilege to be talking here, and I was listening with great intent, our friend Chairman Pai's thoughts, and I was so happy to learn, that Chairman Pai has realized that a band which is delicensed can create more value for the economy as also for the governments and also innovators than when you auction it. So I think that's the great message which you have given, and of course the kind of work which you have been carrying out in FCC, you are really leading from the front, I must say, and the kind of thought process which goes into it, so I think that's really commendable, and it was a pleasure, as always, listening to Chairman Pai. Of course, Professor Karandikar, Dorothy, and other speakers before also spoke on many of these technical aspects of the Wi-Fi and the desirability of having this thing. Let me begin by, first of all, thanking the Broadband India Forum, Mr. T.V. Ramachandran, Mr. Rajat Mukherjee, and all the office bearers who have been organizing, such events and who have been at the forefront again of advocating the use of Wi-Fi in special and broadband in general, as to how that is so important for our country, and actually suggesting a lot of policy measures, whether it is a satellite communication, whether it's a broadband in general. So I think a lot of work they have been doing, and I always feel privileged to be a part of that, kind of this system and their conferences, etc. I think the topic which you have put it for today, especially celebrating World Wi-Fi Day, and you call it digital dialogue, that is the proliferation of broadband through Wi-Fi, and you also released a booklet, and I'm sure it will contain a lot of good ideas on the subject. I think I want to begin, looking at how Corona, this pandemic, has actually taught many, new things to us. It has, imagine if this pandemic was there 20 years back. I think we could not have sustained even a week's lockdown, what to say of, 60 days or 65 days. Because at that time, we could just have been, closed in our houses, not being able to communicate with anybody. And imagine half the population will come out after even a week's lockdown as mentally sick. Because, isolation, both physical and mental, can be really heartbreaking. Today, we have not really felt it as much because of the fact that we felt connected. Throughout this period, we were talking to our friends, we were talking to our loved ones, and kind of getting their welfare messages and doing video calling and stuff like that. So actually, it is only the telecommunication network which has made this entire lockdown period and pandemic a kind of bearable in some sense, or we have not gone mad, so to say, in a very simple term. So I think this is the ICT, or the communication, is a real hero of this pandemic. And I must also compliment our players like Chairman Pai got the pledge done by all the broadband providers. We did not get a formal pledge done, but I must say and compliment that all our service providers, both the ISPs, TSPs, infrastructure players, everybody has done a commendable job in ensuring that we have a very smooth sort of network. There have not been any major or even minor breakdowns during this period, and we have sort of crossed this period, and we are still going through it. But it's a great service. During this period, there have been huge surge in the network traffic, which has also been sort of absorbed or kind of taken care of. There have been changes in the pattern. For example, the traffic was emerging largely in the daytime from the offices, and now the traffic is emerging largely in the daytime from the homes because people are working from home, and that has also been kind of taken care of. The people, frontline workers of telecom companies working at the towers, fine-tuning them and doing the work in the field has also been a commendable effort. So I must begin again by congratulating and complimenting all the workers who are working to ensure that country remain connected and we are able to do our things. Further on, we have also realized that there are certain things which we were not doing because we were not used to do those things. And of course, these meetings, the virtual meetings are an example. Virtual meetings, both for these conferences or seminars and also for the work from home type of communications with our colleagues in the office holding our meetings. And we find that this new normal or this new way of conducting meetings and conducting discussions in some sense happens to be more productive. Of course, it is bereft of any lunches or dinners after the meeting, but nevertheless, that's a small sacrifice to make, and it's perfectly feasible. And in some sense, it's even better. It's more environment friendly. You don't have to travel. You don't have to devote so much of time. Of course, that also has its own pleasures, but nevertheless, it is something which is doable. And we find that work from home, telemedicine, e-commerce, retail, education, e-governance, payments, courts, enterprises, all these areas are actually more and more using the connectivity infrastructure to conduct their business. In fact, the payment systems in India during the month of April, we saw 1.25 billion UPI transactions worth about 30 billion US dollars in a month. So that has seen an all-time high. Similarly, about 750 billion Aadhaar enabled payment systems where people are able to get the cash in their hands doing these digital transactions. So I think digital transactions have seen a huge upsurge during these periods, and sometimes people feel that if I take cash, that cash may contain the virus, and therefore let's avoid the cash. So in a way, this fear has also kind of contributed in a positive manner to the increase in the digital transaction, which is actually the vision of our Prime Minister, our Digital India vision, where he has envisaged that the government should be inside the mobile. A person should be so empowered so as to conduct any transactions with the government, payment transactions and other transactions using his mobile phone. And he, sort of gave a slogan of JAM, Janadhan, Aadhaar and Mobile, which is a very powerful trinity, because Janadhan creates a financial receptacle, an account where you can transfer all the direct benefit transfers and other things. Aadhaar creates a digital identity which is verifiable online. And of course, mobile creates a communication channel. And these three things together actually enable and empower a citizen to conduct a business transactions. So this is a wonderful thing which has happened in our country. Also, the fact that we have created a whole stack of utilities, we call, typically people call it India Stack, which means that, you have the online digital signature, you have a, private space on public cloud and DigiLocker, you have the payment platform, and you have many other kind of systems in place which enable presence-less, paperless, cashless governance. So I think this is again something which has happened by way of innovation in our country, and our Prime Minister has been consistent in kind of pushing these reforms in Digital India program and other programs also. Imagine we have been able to transfer billions of, the Garib Kalyan Yojana of the Prime Minister, transferring 500 rupees to each person's account. It would not have been possible but for the fact that now you have the financial address of each person, and you don't even need to know his or her bank account. You can just use Aadhaar as the financial address and transfer money. So I think lot of things have happened, and we are thankful and we are happy that India has developed such robust and scalable architecture, which actually enables people to be given direct benefit transfer, even of a small value like 500 rupees, which is about translate to about $7 maybe. So that's the kind of structure, infrastructure which we have made. However, what is also required is to have a very robust digital communication infrastructure, because you might have applications, various kinds of applications, but unless you have a very robust, ubiquitous, frugal digital connectivity infrastructure, you will not be able to do many of these things, because ultimately at the end of the day, if you don't have the communication infrastructure, you can't have any application on which is supposed to run on top of it. So therefore, I think that's the most important part. And I think the most important part of that also, that part, is the Wi-Fi. I think this is very, very important. And I'm not a technology person who can talk about the various protocols and various new protocols which are emerging and which are going to provide a much better sort of, and I'm sure all these people, the persons like Dorothy Stanley, Professor Abhay Karandikar, many of these people are involved in developing newer and better protocols so as to increase the throughput and the speed of the Wi-Fi. But let me speak from the public, policy perspective as to why and how that Wi-Fi proliferation is important. So first of all, let me admit that in terms of the ICT index given by ITU, we are at position 134 out of 176 or 195. I'm not sure which is the denominator, or which is the number of countries which have been evaluated. But we are not at a great, greatest place there. And I think if we have to kind of progress, I think one of the indications is the information and communication infrastructure. Second peculiarity of our country is that we are a wireless country. So while USA and many other developed economies had created a fixed line broadband, fixed line infrastructure, and that was, of course, telephone to begin with, and thereafter it became broadband through a fixed line. That infrastructure is very much developed. We, unfortunately, when the sort of wireless revolution came around 2000, we only had about 20 million fixed line telephones. And as you know, in India, it used to take years together to get a telephone connection in those times. So I think, unfortunately, after that, the telephone lines, the fixed telephone lines, started getting uprooted rather than getting added. So the situation today is that we have only 7% data coming from the fixed line, fixed access, and 93% comes from the wireless. And also the fact that the data transportation is very, very heavy. We are having a huge, data coming on the wireless, and therefore puts a load on the spectrum in some sense, and the quality of service gets affected. So this is one. And generally, many countries, European countries and US, the Wi-Fi is used to offload the telecommunications, sort of data, other things, and so therefore to cause less sort of load on the spectrum and improve the quality of service. In our country, no such thing happens. The total number of Wi-Fi hotspots in our country is of the order of less than 100,000. While in a much smaller country like France, it's about 1.8 million Wi-Fi hotspots. And of course, many European countries have, and we were just talking that, we will end up having large number of Wi-Fi hotspots, hundreds of millions of Wi-Fi hotspots. We have not been able to sort of do it. And somehow or the other, the telecom service providers feel that if I have Wi-Fi hotspots, then my sale of data through the wireless will go down. Now, that's a very short-term thinking in my view. And what we need to do is to proliferate Wi-Fi as much as possible. So I think what is required is we had actually keeping this view, and we also understand that India is a very typical, peculiar market. Here if you give a technology which costs a lot of money, nobody is going to take it. Here also we need to give a scalable technology. So we need to actually deploy a frugal technology, an interoperable technology, scalable technology. That is what works in our country. Nobody was making phone calls when the rates were something like 8 rupees 40 paisa per 16 rupees 80 paisa per minute. Now everybody is talking. You have 11 billion minutes, I suppose, every day talk time in India. Now that it's more or less next to nothing, negligible charges. So this is what technology adoption takes place, but you have to keep an eye on the cost of that technology deployment. And therefore, it's important for us to realize that we need technologies which are frugal, interoperable, scalable, so that people can adopt it. So what we came up with actually 3 years back, and it has been more than 3 years, and I'm a little disappointed to observe that the matter remains pending as it is. Unfortunately, we gave a proposal for Wi-Fi access network interface, and we gave this proposal after a huge amount of sort of consultation, pilot. It took about 1 year of the entire exercise. That's where we gave it, and the whole purpose of that was the following. Number one, we wanted that there should be an interoperable Wi-Fi system, which means that when you go to an airport, for example, you want to connect to the airport by Wi-Fi, you have to give it your OTP will come, you have to give your phone number and OTP comes, and then you authenticate yourself, and then you are told, okay, within 30 minutes you have a free Wi-Fi, and thereafter you will be charged, for example. So every time you latch on to a new Wi-Fi hotspot, you have to authenticate yourself. Similarly, if it is a free Wi-Fi, no problem. But if it is a paid Wi-Fi, then you have to make payment using net banking, using UPI, or using some other stuff, and that itself is another exercise. So essentially, and the last is, of course, from a security perspective, this whole OTP verification is also very important. So we thought, why can't we unbundle these three things? Authentication, accounting, and authorization, and then that's something which can be done. Secondly, if we can somehow create an ecosystem whereby even the smaller endpoints, which we just have about 20 million fixed line endpoints, if they can become retailers of the selling the Wi-Fi, the pawn shop or the retail kirana shops can become the Wi-Fi sort of emitting points, then it will be a wonderful thing. How do they become an emitting point? They can become a router, and then having some kinds of chits saying, so somebody comes to their shop, they can say, okay, take 2 rupees worth of Wi-Fi for half an hour, and they give a password, share a password with him and stuff like that. That's one way. Another way is, can we create a digital sort of infrastructure? Can we create a software infrastructure which will enable a digital marketing of this, digital accounting of this whole kind of system? So somebody comes, he's given the menu saying that Wi-Fi hotspot is available. You want to log in? Yes. This is the menu. Okay, yes. And then thereafter you are logged in. And secondly, also, you don't have to authenticate again and again, because that authentication can be done once. So we actually unbundled the entire thing, unbundled the application providers. There will be a separate class of application providers, and people can innovate and provide applications. They can use the existing payment gateways, which is such a robust infrastructure in terms of UPI, which is developed in our country. Then we can use the people who are able to provide these digital marketing, the authorization and accounting processes. That's something which can be done. And the poor, kirana shop fellow just plugs in the Wi-Fi, and the rest is taken care of by this digital, kind of cloud above him. It is similar to the telecom service providers being provided services by the technology companies for their billing systems, for their other kinds of systems. So this is what we envisaged. And this would have been, actually, we got the idea of this from Aadhaar. Aadhaar authentication system actually is able to provide a third-party identity authentication to multiple sectors. Today we are delivering fair price shops, we are delivering ration, and we are delivering multiple services, banking services. You are able to open bank account, you are able to withdraw money, Aadhaar enabled payment system. So we we are using the infrastructure of Aadhaar to authenticate, and you'll be surprised to know that we are creating 1 billion kind of authentications per month on this Aadhaar infrastructure. About 60 billion authentications have taken place since Aadhaar authentication was put in place. So you can imagine the kind of scale at which the authentication systems have operated. Similarly, we realized UPI is a platform which actually enabled a completely interoperable system. So the payment systems of the bank was in a way commoditized, and it became more or less virtually free. You can't imagine transferring money from a Western Union bank money transfer things. They charge hell of a lot of money for transferring from one account to another account. Here in India, you can transfer 1 rupee, as little as 1 rupee, which is 1.5 cents US, from one account to another account without any charge whatsoever. In fact, you are sometimes given, rewards and awards for that purpose. So this kind of infrastructure, and you had 1.25 billion transactions per month going on at this current pandemic time. So this is something which actually needs to be replicated in a number of sectors, and we thought, what a better sector to replicate it than Wi-Fi itself, which will actually, you can replicate it in software domains many times. Aadhaar software, UPI is a software, maybe health systems and telemedicine will be a software, agriculture will be a software. But this is something which is actually our infrastructure for all softwares to run on. So therefore, I could go to a Kirana shop. I don't have a Wi-Fi packet. I could just buy a 2 rupees sachet worth of Wi-Fi, do some work of mine, even make payments to him using UPI on that Wi-Fi. So these are some of the things which we had emphasized, that this will be an infrastructure which will be very, very frugal, which will be sachet sized, and which will, once you start working, India is a place where you have low value, high volume, transactions, and that is what creates, the sustainability of it. Many people ask me, if your data, prices are so low, how can your TSPs make money? And I tell them that if your country's population is 10 million, then, multiplied by even $20, you will just have so much of, million only. Now, if you multiply $2 by 1 billion, 1.3 billion, whatever, that will be 2 billion. So essentially, low volume, low value transactions work in this country. So we had given that recommendations with that point in view. I think if we would have accepted it, if we would have started it, I think we would have created another record of sorts, like UPI transactions and Aadhaar infrastructure in the country. I think it should be given a thought by the Department of Telecom at the earliest point in time, so that we, especially in these times, especially when India does not have a very robust fixed line infrastructure, I think whatever fixed line infrastructure we have, we can use it. And further, it will also work as a pull model for provision of the fixed lines. For example, BSNL has got 600,000 kilometers of fiber. Railtel has got that much of, a lot of fiber has been put down by Railtel. All these, there will be a demand for the fiber, because these Kirana shop fellows will say, okay, I'll earn 100 rupees extra, but why not? This is, let me get a fiber to my place, and thereafter I can radiate the Wi-Fi. So this will create a huge amount of traction. So that is, I think, what should happen. I wish, a couple of steps which Chairman Pai has taken in USA, like delicensing some of the spectrum in 6 gigahertz. Those things should work, because my proposition is that delicensing actually provides much more economic value than the auction, and then in many of these spectrum bands, and that should happen. So I think these efforts of the Broadband India Forum, where they are actually always advocating, promoting, and publishing studies, those things are extremely important. For example, one study which they had published a few years back was a study on the satellite kind of bandwidth, and it's very interesting figure. I remember they had said that the 1 megabyte cost of a satellite cost of data going through satellite, coming through satellite, is in India is 384 times that of the same cost in US. So while the data cost from the cellular network in India is probably 1/100th of what it is in US, the data cost of satellite data is 384 times that in US. So it's such an anomaly. We should liberalize and all these things are a part of the National Digital Communication Policy, where we talk of free sky, free, free skies or open skies as it is called. So I think we need to put in place at an accelerated pace the reforms in this technology. I think a lot of reforms are already happening. Let me not say that nothing is happening. The BharatNet is, as Professor Karandikar said, is going on, and hopefully we will be able to provide connectivity to each panchayat, that to a very robust optical fiber connectivity. So I think those things are happening. We have very liberal spectrum sharing and spectrum trading policies in our country, and probably we need to further liberalize them. We have actually given a recommendation to increase the role of the IP1, the infrastructure providers, because we feel that there is a need for more investment in the telecom space. And that investment can come in if we can unbundle this entire thing rather than vertical players. We can have different players, network players, the players in the infrastructure space, and players in the Wi-Fi space, for example. So I think that's the way to go forward, and I'm sure this will happen too soon. And I once again want to compliment and congratulate BIF for organizing this seminar, and this gave me opportunity to listen to our dear friend Chairman Pai, and he, as he says that India has a special place in his heart. Let me tell you that Indians also have a special place in their hearts for you, Chairman Pai. So we always, look towards you, to listen to you, to get your thoughts, and I'm sure we'll continue to collaborate in future too. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir, for your very vibrant views. And in fact, thank you to all the speakers sharing your thoughts on this emerging idea that promises to change the future of access to information, education, and entertainment, ensuring that the societal benefits are evenly distributed to all the population. Now I have a few questions which I intend to take from the audience. I must comment, Chairman Pai has been extremely prolific and quick in answering a large number of them. So he has taken my role. In fact, he has taken out most of the acting. I have two questions, sir. Chairman Pai, this is a question for you, sir. While complimenting you for the great speech as well as pioneering role for the Wi-Fi 6E, in India we swear by technology neutrality. What is your take on delicensing 6 gigahertz on a technology neutral basis? Chairman Pai.
You are mute, Chairman Pai. You should unmute your mic.
Chairman Pai, you're still on mute. Okay, so while Chairman Pai is still working on that particular one, there's another question which I have, sir, and this one is for Dr. Sharma. Is not a mix of fiber and Wi-Fi hotspots the way to go to deliver 5G bandwidths and beyond?
I'm sorry, I didn't understand the question. Say it again, please.
Is it not that a mix of fiber and Wi-Fi hotspots is the way to go to deliver 5G bandwidths and beyond?
No, I completely agree that, you can't have Wi-Fi without having a robust, connection at the back end. So obviously you need fiber, and that's why I said that once you have the demand for Wi-Fi, then this demand will pull the fiber also to various locations, because a demand, sort of supply led system may not always be the most optimal one, and it's better to have demand for that. So that's one thing which should happen. Of course, the other delivery, the fixed wireless access in 5G will be again an extremely important intervention in improving the connectivity in our country, because it's not possible to provide each home with the fiber, and where you have the homes behind a temple or under a tree or under the bridge, etc. We have a lot of poor people in our country, and they can't afford or even you can't get there. So I think it's, especially in the rural areas, it's possible to have a fiber going up to the curb, fiber going up to some point, and thereafter you have the fixed wireless access and using the 5G technology. So I think I agree that in one of the most important use cases of 5G in our country will be to provide fixed wireless access. That's I believe. Of course, there will be many more use cases of 5G which will happen, but this I think is certainly most needed one, and I agree.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much for that excellent articulation. So there's one last question that if I could take the liberty of asking you. The question is, when can we expect TRAI to start 6 gigahertz spectrum consultation process?
Well, I think as of now we don't have any reference from the Department of Telecom on this subject. Typically on the spectrum questions, I mean, while we have the mandate we can start a suo motu consultations on many of the issues, but typically on spectrum questions, they're licensing ones, they're reserve prices and other kinds of issues. We get references from Department of Telecom. So my short answer at this point in time is that we will start the consultation when we get the reference from DOT.
So thank you very much for that. And now may I finally, as a wrap-up, call upon Mr. Sashidharan, Managing Director of our partner, Bharat Exhibitions, to offer some acknowledgements and thanks. Over to you, Sashi.
Thank you, Rajat. Namaste, good morning and good evening to each one of you. On the occasion of celebration of the World Wi-Fi Day, I would like to express my sincere thanks to our chief guest, Mr. Ajit Pai, Chairman of the Federal Communication Commission, USA. Sir, thank you very much for taking out time and to join us today for this World Wi-Fi Day celebration. Thank you very much, sir. A special thanks to Dr. R.S. Sharma, Chairman TRAI. Sir, thank you for chairing this session and keep on sending various various recommendations. And thank you for joining us today on this World Wi-Fi Day celebration. A special thanks to Ms. Dorothy Stanley, Chair of Wi-Fi Working Group IEEE. Madam, thank you very much and namaste, joining us today, and would like to see you in more our events in the next time. I would like to thank Professor Saab. Thank you very much for joining, Professor Abhay Kandikar. We being meeting in regular or 5G events. Sir, thank you very much for joining us today and giving your inputs on the Wi-Fi. I would like to give thanks to Sri Puneet Chawla ji and Madam Anita Praveen to joining us for this launching of the Wi-Fi paper, white paper on the Wi-Fi. Sir, thank you very much joining us today for releasing this Wi-Fi. I would like to thank each one of you for joining us today, and special thanks to Rajatji and TV sir on this occasion. Namaste, good evening, have a nice weekend.
Thank you very much, everyone. That brings us to the end of our session today, celebrating World Wi-Fi Day. And let me also join Sashidharan in thanking each and every one of our speakers for having taken time out of their schedule and joining us. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you.